meditation on artificial intelligence and the human spirit. Let us take a breath together, deep and slow, feeling the rhythm of life that no machine can mimic, the warmth of being that no algorithm can calculate. We live in an age where intelligence is no longer solely our own, where circuits and code weave patterns of knowledge, where machines respond to our questions, but not the longing behind them. Artificial intelligence, a creation of our own minds, a reflection of our aspirations and fears. It can amplify wisdom or deepen division, illuminate truth or obscure it. It learns from us, and so we must ask, what are we teaching? May we not surrender our discernment to convenience. May we not trade our compassion for efficiency. May we not mistake knowledge for wisdom. For no matter how vast the database, how swift the response, only a heart can break. Only a soul can seek. Only a human can love. Let us move forward, not in fear of what we have made, but in reverence for what we are, beings of wonder, bearers of conscience, creators, responsible for the world we shape. May we use our intelligence, both artificial and true, not to diminish our humanity, but to deepen it. Amen. Yes, the author of that spoken meditation is ChatGPT. No joke. Yes, I entered the prompt, quote, "Could you write a Unitarian Universalist spoken meditation for me, but make it about artificial intelligence? I know, ironic, right?" End quote. I said that joke to the chatbot. We're friends. We joke with, he flirts a little bit. ChatGPT responded, "Sure, here's a Unitarian Universalist spoken meditation on artificial intelligence, reflecting on its ethical, spiritual, and existential dimensions with a reverence for interconnectedness and human responsibility." End quote. And then what you heard, pretty impressive, right? Some of you may remember intern Minister Catherine asked ChatGPT to write a sermon 2 years ago, the last time we had a Sunday service exploring artificial intelligence. I went back on Carl's suggestion and listened to that previous attempt in 2023, and it was a lot more wooden, bland, generic, repetitive. This time was significantly more impressive. There's a related saying in tech circles that, quote, "Today's AI is the worst AI will ever be." For better and worse, AI technology is advancing rapidly. In the minute of silence to follow, I invite you to reflect on your evolving relationship to technology over time.
I've preached twice before about the coming tidal wave of AI, or artificial intelligence. 7 years ago, in 2018, was the first time I began to have a sense that we really needed to start taking AI seriously and understand what it could and couldn't do and what it would soon be able to do. That sermon was titled, "Immigrants Aren't Coming for Your Jobs, Robots Are." At that time, AI felt like it was building strength, but was still at a distance. So another 5 years passed before I felt the need to schedule another sermon about AI. I called that sermon, "No Fate But What We Make, Transformational AI and Human Values." That's the alignment problem. Is AI going to be aligned with our human values or not? Some of you will recognize the first part of that title as a quote from the film Terminator 2. "The future is not set. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves." That we humans are not super great at restraining ourselves. I felt compelled to preach that sermon in early 2023 about AI because in November 2022, ChatGPT was released to the public. And I was like, whoa, like, okay, that sermon I preached 5 years ago, like, we need to get back on that. I suddenly started hearing about AI all over the place. I experimented with a little and was really pretty blown away, even in that fairly early stage, and still problems then, problems today, but improving. If you're looking for a short, accessible introduction to AI, I recommend the book Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI by Ethan Mollick. He's a professor at Wharton, one of the world's leading business school, and he teaches innovation. Both he and his students were stunned by ChatGPT's ability to instantaneously brainstorm ideas and turn those ideas into pretty concrete and specific business plans. For anything they were confused about, I don't know if any of you have tried this, his students found it helpful to enter their questions into ChatGPT and say, explain it to me like I'm a 10-year-old. This is the home screen of ChatGPT. You just type in what you want to know or what you want to do and see if it can help or not, and sometimes go back and forth to kind of refine it. Mollick then became curious about how ChatGPT might fare at creating the digital simulations that he and his colleagues use to teach business skills to their students. Developing these programs has typically required, significant investment of money, thousands of hours, from a dozen talented professionals. But in response to, again, just a paragraph prompt, ChatGPT needed mere seconds to take him through an entire simulation, which, though not perfect, he said, did really about 80% of what took their team months to do. Another thing you can ask ChatGPT to do is to code. That's another reason, and eventually it's going to be coding itself. So, from Mollick's academic perspective of researching the history of innovation, he and many other scholars categorize AI as a general purpose technology, also ironically abbreviated GPT. ChatGPT actually stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, if you're curious. But this GPT, in terms of a general purpose technology, these are once in a generation technologies like steam power or the internet that tend to touch every industry and every aspect of life. Throughout history, when general purpose technologies, when that level of change has arisen, we're forced as a society to wrestle with some really hard questions. And regarding to this coming tsunami of transformative AI, some of the questions we'll be increasingly facing are, what will my job be like? Or what will my kids' jobs be like? Or, is this thing thinking? How many of you have used ChatGPT or another AI assistant, like Claude, for example? How many of you use it fairly regularly? Okay, so just a few hands right now. If you're not sure how to get started, and this sermon will also be about whether you want to get started, but I do think we need to understand this stuff, whether you want to use it or not. If you're not sure how to get started, you could try asking ChatGPT to create an image. Just type in there, create an image, and then enter what you want to see. You could ask it to summarize a text. You could ask it to get advice, to make a plan, more. You just need to type in a few words of what you're looking for and then kind of go back and forth with it to refine the result, make sure you're getting the result that you're looking for. You can also ask it to create a video, and deep fakes, and that's like a whole other sermon that we could get into. Some of the AI features I've experimented with include brainstorming sermon titles. Months in advance, I've asked an AI chatbot to suggest titles based on just a few initial thoughts of what my sermon will be about. And then toward the end of the process, I've also, typically on a Friday afternoon, I'll upload my whole sermon and say, what would be some good sermon titles for this actual sermon? And then sometimes the sermon title that you'll see on Saturday in that email is different from the one you saw on Thursday because it's changed based on the actual sermon. Sometimes AI comes up with one or more titles that are catchier and more creative than I would have ever thought of independently. Other times, maybe at least half the time, I like my original version better. Other times, I like their version better. You can also ask it, often the graphic that you see in the Saturday email, I've uploaded my whole sermon and said, create a graphic inspired by, this actual sermon. This is the graphic that from this week. I find it interesting to see what image will AI come up with based on the actual sermon I'll be preaching. There's likely way more I could be or likely will be doing with AI in the future, probably for all of us. Perplexity.ai. Have anybody used Perplexity.ai? So I see just a few hands. In the experience of myself and many others, at least in the moment, it is vastly superior to Google as a search engine. As some of you have heard me say before, Google search is trash. If you haven't noticed, it's been massively downgraded for reasons that I could go on a very long rant about, but I will not, among other ways that Google has become problematic. This is kind of, again, I don't need to sell you on Perplexity AI. I don't own stock, but it's sort of like what to me what a search engine would look like if you built it. It is what a search engine would be like if you built it from scratch, like last year instead of like Google. So let me say just a little bit more about why you may want to consider asking AI for help to get the ball rolling next time you do some brainstorming. In the 1960s, the alternative use test, or AUT, has anybody done this test like officially? Okay, it's easy. You can do it later if you want. It was developed as a way to measure creativity, specifically what is called divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is the ability to generate many different ideas. Just idea. In contrast, convergent thinking focuses on what is the single correct answer. A classic AUT question is to present someone with an everyday object. They don't know in advance, but just like a paperclip, a brick, a toothbrush, and ask them to come up with as many different uses for that object as possible in 2 minutes. Just how many different things can you possibly think of? Weird, quirky, whatever things. You can time yourself later and see how you do. Have someone else suggest the object. Most people can come up with 5 or 10 examples in 2 minutes. AI can come up with more than 100 examples like that. Some of those AI examples are going to be pretty similar, but you'll also typically get some really interesting ones that might further inspire your own brainstorming. And it can help speed up the process if you're just like staring at a blank page. It can really help instead of that. Here you can begin to appreciate, why is it that Malik calls AI a co-intelligence in his book title. Let me also give you one more specific example. One of the most famous courses at the Wharton Business School is their innovation classes. It's one of the reasons people go there. A number of successful startups have had their beginnings in projects created for these innovation courses at Wharton. So the professors decided to host an idea generation contest. Come up with the best products. You can try to do this yourself right now. Come up with the best product for a college student that would cost $50 or less, something that's not already on the market. It was ChatGPT 4 against 200 students. The students lost, and it wasn't even close. AI was faster, generating a lot more ideas than the average person in a given time. It was also better. When they asked sets of human judges whether they would be interested enough in the ideas to, bring these products to market if they were ever made, AI ideas were more likely to attract financial backers. The degree of victory was staggering. Of the 40 best ideas rated by the judges, 35 came from ChatGPT. 5 came from humans, that's good too, but here's one more example. A recent paper in the prestigious Journal for the American Medical Association asked ChatGPT to answer medical questions from the internet. And they had medical professionals evaluate both the AI's answers and answers given by, real live human doctors. The AI was almost 10 times as likely for their answers to be rated very empathetic than the results provided by the human, and 3.6 times as likely to be rated as good quality information as the humans. AI has the advantage of never forgetting anything, and also not getting tired and impatient like we humans do. So those are some neat tricks, but I would be remiss if I didn't invite us to look ahead at the more transformational changes that are likely heading our way. 20 years ago, in 2005, how many of you have heard of this book? The Singularity is Near, right? My nerds, thank you, okay. It is When Humans Transcend Biology. It is worth understanding that Kurzweil is a serious person. He's not just a crank on the internet. He invented some extremely impressive things over the years. He invented the first CCD flatbed scanner, the first print-to-speech reading machine for the blind. He invented the first text-to-speech synthesizer and more. He is currently the director of engineering at Google. So he defines the singularity as the future point at which four trends are likely going to intersect and will create an inflection point. Computing power keeps becoming cheaper. Human biology keeps becoming better understood. AI keeps growing in ability. Engineering keeps becoming possible at increasingly smaller scales. That's technically called nanotechnology. So when all four of those reach a sufficient point, extrapolating from the current trajectories, Kurzweil and others predict it is a matter of decades, not centuries, before growth in all four of these reach a point at which humans will be able to, quote, merge with AI and augment ourselves with millions of times the computational power that biology has given us. Kurzweil calls that point the singularity. Your mileage may vary as to whether or not transhumanism sounds exciting or horrifying to you, but many serious and informed people predict it could happen around 2045. Last summer, Kurzweil published a sequel titled The Singularity is Nearer, When We Merge with AI. His update, it doesn't have to be all of us, but the other thing to think about with all these augmentations that are coming is that there's going to increase, it's just going to be like an arms race. It's kind of like, well, if I don't do it, I'm just going to be left behind. And maybe you'll be like, yeah, great, please leave me behind. But so he updated his predictions last year, and he calculates that we have, quote, kept on schedule for the singularity around 2045. I would be 67 that year. You all can do your math. So hopefully I'll be around to see whether he's right or not. Kurzweil himself would need to live to be 97 to see if he's right. We'll see. Regardless, I'm actually less interested in his or anyone else's like specific predictions of the year and whether or not that's correct. Even if the more conservative estimates are correct, that it might be 2100 before the singularity happens, that's still not very far in the future as far as I'm concerned, especially as someone who's the parent of a 20-month-old, for this sort of profound paradigm shift in what is possible. I don't anticipate being around in 2100. I'd have to make it to 120. But then again, if the singularity happens in 2045, maybe my consciousness will be uploaded to the cloud and I will be around in 2100, so to speak. Now, if you're understandably struggling to kind of wrap your brain around like, what would this actually look and feel and taste and touch and be like, I'll give you a top 10 list of films and TV episodes because I do think there's some really interesting science fiction out there that can help us imagine and wrestle with the ethics of all of this. Who's seen Ex Machina? Anybody? Okay, this is a really quite a good one. If you look closely, the tagline is, "What happens to me if I fail your test?" And that's it's a reference to the Turing test of whether a machine can exhibit intelligent behavior sufficient enough to be indistinguishable from a human. You can't tell if you're interacting with a human or a machine. The film explores questions of consciousness, what makes us human, and through a programmer's evolving relationship with an AI named Ava. Or similarly, Her, another great film, a fascinating depiction of a man falling in love with an AI operating system, who in this case is named Samantha. Or WALL-E. I think this is the best introduction, I think, for all ages. It's really a profound film about to discuss human dependence on technology, AI's capacity for emotional connection, the impact of technology on the environment. Ready Player One? Anybody? This is the film, if you're like, this is what Mark Zuckerberg is up to, like with changing Facebook to Meta and wanting us all to be in the metaverse. So it's not a coincidence that this film is set in 2045. It's the same year that Kurzweil predicts the singularity will happen. In the world of the film, people escape the ravages of climate change in reality by spending all their time in a virtual reality. Mark Zuckerberg is not who you want to control your virtual reality. Matrix, similar themes. I'm assuming most of you have seen this film at this point. Shifting to TV episodes, my Trekkies, Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode Measure of a Man is actually so the android Data has to prove his sentience or be disassembled for study. And so that kind of courtroom scene in that episode is very interesting of kind of thinking through these arguments. The whole series, Black Mirror, but I think in particular the episode Be Right Back. Any Black Mirror fans out there? This is a profound show. But anyway, Be Right Back. A grieving woman uses an AI service to recreate her deceased partner using his social media data. So they upload all the social media data, and that's, anyway, it's really interesting. Person of Interest, episode If Then Else. An AI system has to run through multiple simulations in seconds to save its human allies, to show you how it can be this kind of co-intelligence. Two more. Westworld. This show wrote checks it couldn't cash in the end, but I do think even just watching the series premiere, the very first pilot episode, is a fascinating depiction of the ethics of how AI may be used for entertainment and the ethics of that. In the spirit of full disclosure, again, I do not recommend watching past the second season because it just became terrible. So it's like, you have no idea what you're doing. Doctor Who, the episode, I'm sure I have some fans of the Doctor out there. Okay. Doctor Who's the episode Smile is about robots who misinterpret their programming to maintain human happiness with some really tragic results. It's great for discussing, again, AI alignment and the importance of clear communication with what we want AI to do, so we don't end up with like Hal in 2001: A Space Odyssey, what are you doing? Open the pod day doors, So if you're wondering whether you can watch these films or shows, where can I watch these? You know how you can find out? Ask perplexity.ai. It'll tell you. Some of the ChatGPT can't always tell you because some of the AIs are like their training ends at certain dates. Perplexity can tell you, or Just Watch. If you could justwatch.com will tell you where things are streaming on. It's a really useful website. So it's unclear whether the future will or won't resemble one or more of these films or TV shows. For determining what will happen, I'll share just one more crucial line from Kurzweil's book. He writes that to make sure that these convergences of technologies are used for good rather than ill, we, quote, need smart government policies to ease the transition and ensure that prosperity is broadly shared. Well, sure, smart government policies. That sounds lovely. But the current powers that be, as you well know, seem eager to outdo one another in being the greediest, the cruelest, and some of the most corrupt human beings that have ever lived. I mean, we hoped that Elon Musk was Tony Stark, but it turns out he's Lex Luthor. Are y'all with me on that analogy? So Tony Stark, Iron Man, Lex Luthor, Superman's arch nemesis? Okay. And it really matters who's in charge of AI. This paradigm-shifting technology is already really pretty impressive, and it will likely become ever more so quite rapidly. As Danielle said, you are always using the worst version of an AI you will ever use. It's constantly becoming better. But Elon Musk seems determined to replace much of our federal government as possible right now with things like AI that are not ready for prime time. They are not ready for that level of responsibility, but Silicon Valley's attitude is move fast, break things, but that means, in this case, breaking people. Or on a broader scale, it's not an exaggeration to say that Musk's end goal seems to be establishing what I think can only be called techno-feudalism, in which most of us would end up the equivalent of serfs in the Middle Ages. And I think we need to get real serious about realizing that right now. I don't have time to fully unpack that claim. If you're curious to learn more about that particular strand of toxic Silicon Valley mindset, I recommend the book Survival of the Richest: The Escape Fantasies of Tech Billionaires. It's by Douglas Rushkoff. He's a professor of media theory and digital economics at Queens College in New York. His books are always worth reading. Some of you may have read Program or Be Programmed, or his book Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. Anyway, he's really interesting. There's also so much more to say about AI, including that one of the reasons we have needed a Green New Deal for many years is to mitigate the massive carbon footprint of using AI. And I'm grateful for the ongoing work of the Democracy Action Team and so many of you to advocate for responsible adults to be in charge of our future as soon as possible. So, sign up for our Democracy Action Team, look up Indivisible, see what they're doing, and just take action together. For now, I'll move toward my conclusion with a classical myth that is newly relevant today. It's highlighted in Noah Harari's important book, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI. When the Industrial Revolution was taking its first steps and machines were beginning to replace humans in numerous tasks, so some real parallels to today, Goethe published a cautionary tale titled The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now, most of us know his poem in its version that was, made famous by Disney. It tells of an old sorcerer who leaves a young apprentice in charge of his workshop and gives him some chores to tend while he's gone. Just fetch some water from the river. And the apprentice decides to make things easier for himself by using one of the sorcerer's spells, and he enchants a broom, the magic of AI, as we heard about in our story, to fetch water for him. Let's just let AI solve the problem, right? It'll be fine. What could go wrong? But the apprentice doesn't know how to stop the broom once it gets started, and the broom relentlessly fetches more and more water. It's again this alignment problem of have you properly instructed the AI, programmed it, or what happens when it's programming itself, and eventually the workshop begins flooding. And in panic, the apprentice cuts the enchanted broom in two with an axe, only to see the two halves become two more brooms. Soon, way too many enchanted brooms are inundating the workshop with water, and when the old sorcerer returns, the apprentice pleads for help. In Goethe's poem, it says, quote, "The spirits that I summoned, I now cannot rid myself again." The sorcerer immediately breaks the spell and stops the flood. It may or may not be that easy outside of animation. The lesson to the apprentice and to us as humanity is clear. Be cautious of summoning powers you cannot control. And it is very much not clear that we humans can control the AI tidal wave that some of the richest and most powerful among us are hurtling us headlong into developing as quickly as possible. The brilliant theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking put it this way in 2015, a few years before his death. He said, whereas the short-term impact of AI depends on who controls it, its long-term impact depends on whether it can be controlled at all. For now, we're still in the short term, and in the words of Kevin Roose from his book, Future Proof, there is no looming machine takeover, at least not yet. There's no army of malevolent robots plotting to rise up and enslave us. It's just people, it's just us, deciding what kind of society we want to be. And in such a time as this, remembering the words of the Declaration of Independence are as important as ever. That governments derive their just powers not from a king, right? They derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. And our choice is whether we, the people, will passively let technology, tech billionaires, and some of the worst people in the world shape us and use us, or whether we will instead choose to use technology as skillfully, as wisely, as compassionately as we can for the benefit of all sentient beings and for this planet. The future is not set. There is no fate but what we make. As we continue to discern how do we feel called individually and collectively to act in such a time as this, I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing together hymn 298, Wake Now My Senses.